Hello, my name is Bird Running Water, and I belong to the Cheyenne and Mescalero Apache Nations. I'm honored to be welcoming you to our reimagined Sundance Film Festival, coming from the Indigenous lands of North America. I'd like to pay a special tribute to the Ute Tribal Nation, the Lenni Lenape Nation, and the Tongva people. We thank them all for giving Sundance Institute our homes. I would also like to honor the Indigenous lands and people from where you are joining us. Please enjoy the show. Ihehet Ahanaka.
Good evening. I'm Clark Weens, co-founder and president of the Circle Cinema Board. Welcome to Circle Cinema and to the Admiral Twin Drive-In, who have something in common. They were both featured in the Tulsa's film of The Outsiders. Welcome also to Sundance Film Festival 2021, hosted by your Circle Cinema, Tulsa's non-profit theater. We thank you always for your attendance, especially during the pandemic. Your safety comes first. Circle Cinema opened in 1928, 93 years old, and is looking forward to its 100th birthday. Community conscious through film, the Circle motto, is well supported by the independent films that the Sundance Film Festival brings to the world. Having the festival here in Tulsa helps to complete that circle. Historically, Circle Cinema has worked with many other nonprofit organizations to bring awareness to their mission and to work with them to make Tulsa a better place to live. In keeping with that tradition, Circle Cinema is donating 100% of proceeds from the Sundance General Admission tickets to the 1921 Race Massacre Centennial Commission, and will work with them to facilitate actions, activities, and events that commemorate and educate all citizens. Thanks again for all your support in keeping the Circle part of Tulsa's culture now and in the future.
This is what originally started for Masquerade. All of them quite changeable, but I like to look at them in color and in the drawings. These are kind of like my diary. When trying to make a painting that reflects somebody else's art, we all worry about not getting it right. This is the world according to me. This is how I see it. If you want to know what's in my head, those 8 paintings are in my head and in my heart, and they come out onto canvas because I need them to.
Leon Russell was very, very entrepreneurial. Leon was creative, and he brought so many people together. And when he descended upon that church, he descended upon Tulsa, Oklahoma, it really became this ecosystem, this musical ecosystem that artists from across America wanted a part of. And that's why so many different artists and musicians came to Tulsa to see what Leon was doing, because in 1972, when Leon purchased the church studio, he was the #1 touring artist in America according to Billboard magazine. And so when I was younger, I used to drive by there thinking I was going to see Eric Clapton or Tom Petty or George Harrison or someone like that, Leon Russell, of course. I heard about the church and the shape that it was in from my brother. And so drove by, and it really just hurt me. It was sad to see the condition that it was in. It was dilapidated, it was boarded up. And so I went on the county tax records. I found the owner, and I wrote him a letter. And I said, hey, I told him who I was, and I said, I'm a huge Leon Russell fan. I'm really interested in the property. And so we scheduled lunch and became friends and talked a lot. And surprisingly, we finally came to an agreement, but I purchased the church sight unseen. I didn't even get an opportunity to go inside. And so that's really how that started. It was several years ago. And I had a little bit of shock when I first went in, but afterwards, it really took a life of its own. So the day I closed on the purchase of the church studio, I was kind of looking around the neighborhood, and the first thing that stood out was Max Electric Building. And I love that building. I love their retro sign. It's kind of an icon here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But there's this big, huge blank wall, and it was immediate. I thought, that needs to have something on it. I approached Jack, the owner of Max Electric, and I said, hey, what do you think about having a mural on this wall? And after he thought about it, after a while, he said, sure, that's a great idea. My original vision for the mural was to create something very beautiful, and I wanted something natural and organic and pretty and botanical. And of course, the first person I thought of was Pat Gordon. And so I approached Pat and I said, how do you feel about your artwork being on the big screen, is what I called it.
My particular case, the bigger the painting, the better the painting. I always like big paintings. I like to get your attention. I want you to walk into a room and say, oh, did you notice that beautiful Steinway grand piano? And the answer needs to be no, because I was looking at the painting above it. So the idea of it being 194 feet long, 14 feet high, that's a lot of square footage in my paintings.
What's interesting about Pat is he lived in the same neighborhood as Leon Russell, and he was very good friends with Leon's muse, Emily Smith. And so Pat was the perfect choice for this mural in my mind. Leon made beautiful music, and Pat makes beautiful art, so why not bring those two things together?
For a year, I sat in my studio and listened to Leon Russell loud, like we were in concert. It was fun, it was incredible, it was inspiring. It made me want to just run in here to paint in the morning, because I couldn't wait to see what I was going to make for this project.
When Pat and I first started talking about this mural and how we were going to do it, muralist Brian Lewis was just finishing up a Leon Russell mural that's really not too far from the church studio. And Pat absolutely loved his work. I did too. I mean, the whole town absolutely loved the work that Brian was doing. And so we got his information, we contacted him, and he said he was game. He said he'd love to learn more about what we're doing and how he can be involved.
Yeah, when she called, and initially I thought they were wanting me to do like my interpretation of it in realism, which would be even harder. So when I was asked to, be a part of this project, there were some reservations. Does the artist know I'm gonna be recreating his art? And then, as the pieces came together, and I kind of got a clear view of what was being asked of me, I started getting real excited. And I didn't get real excited until I actually sat down with Pat and had probably a 3 or 4 hour conversation with him. He gave me a tour of his gallery upstairs, and I saw his art firsthand, up close, and I was like, wow, kind of brought me down to size a little bit. I was like, this guy is he's the real deal.
Brian Lewis is a remarkable, gifted artist. And he does it with spray paint. Spray paint. I work with these little tiny brushes about this big, and he's working with spray paint. He is as gifted a painter as I know. And his medium, spray paint, on brick walls, 3 stories tall. This is what he does for his expression. He wants to get his work out to groups of people, public, out into downtowns everywhere. We have 2 of them right now, and they're really good. But he's coming and he's doing this one, and it's going to be the best. Spray paint.
The translation between the 2 mediums is the scariest part of this. I'm really good at recreating and seeing something and just recreating in a large scale. The mixing of colors and the oil painting and like the wispiness from different brushes used and stuff. I'm gonna try to recreate that the best I can. I just hope I do it justice capturing Pat's work, because it's not about my message. It's about what he wants or what he put into his art, and I'm just making it a much larger scale, kind of amplifying his original pieces.
Whether you're looking at the pieces that Pat created or the pieces that Brian replicated on this huge wall, it has nothing to do with anything except beauty and making you feel good in the moment. And that's really what we wanted with that. And it really goes hand in hand with music. Music is a universal language. Well, art is too. And to bring those 2 things together without any particular agenda is really special to me.
That's what art's for, is to, interpret it. Everybody interprets it differently. I definitely think they're gonna get more in depth with it.
It's about the studio. It's about Leon's history. It's about Leon's future. And I'm remembering things and painting things from my memory, which I don't do. I use photographs. But when it came to Leon, like the portrait, but this was more of an intuitive feeling. And as I remembered, as I saw him from my car window, how he looked. And that's how he looked to me. That's how I remember him in his finest of days.
8 oil on canvas, magnificent pieces that Pat Gordon created will find its final home at the church studio. So we have an exhibit space that will be part of our permanent collection, the church studio archive. And so I think it's going to be so cool that people will be able to go in and see the pieces, how Pat created them, and then go outside, look at this 160-foot wall with Brian Lewis's mural replicating Pat Gordon pieces. I think it's just going to tie it all in. And it's just this collision of, again, this oil on canvas work colliding with this spray paint in this amazing fashion. So, Brian's work is going to be celebrated. Pat's work is going to be celebrated. And ultimately, the work, life, and legacy of Leon Russell is going to be celebrated when people see these pieces.
Follow me to the church.
Welcome to From the Chamber. Today we have a very cool episode. We've got our whole team here from the Mural of Space and Time documentary, which, as you probably know by now, is about the master of space and time, Leon Russell. So, Teresa, you want to introduce us to everybody here? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. So who are you?
Well, I'm Cade Roberts, host of From the Chamber, and occasionally I make music too.
Yeah, Cade is amazing. He's actually our music director and composed the music with the film. So my name is Teresa Knox. I have the title of executive producer, so I'm pretty excited about that title. Never had it before. To my left, we have Pat Gordon. Great artist, yeah. And we have his artwork behind us in this room, so it's absolutely stunning. And then we have Jordan Price, and Jordan is the director of the film. To my right over here, we have Matthew Simonson, and Matthew is a filmmaker, videographer. He's a recent graduate from college, so he's new to our team. And then we have Bryce Rysdale.
Yep, Rydessel.
Yeah, whatever. Okay.
It's a very hard name.
It's different every time
I
say
was
it.
going to ask you.
Yeah.
I've been saying it like several different ways.
Yeah,
so
it changes.
Bryce was very, very instrumental in the film and not only capturing video footage, but editing as well. And so welcome.
He really likes it if you call him Bri Rai.
Bri Rai.
Oh, Bri
That's-
Rai.
He comes up with a
Okay.
nickname for me
Every week.
like once a day, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we should start like on the very beginning. Where did the idea come from, and at what point did you know that Pat was the right choice and stuff? I know some of this was covered in the film, but let's get more into the specifics of how it all came together. And
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I know for me, I'm a really big Leon Russell fan. And I recently, well, it's been a while, it's been several years, I purchased the church studio and we're renovating it. And I just want the neighborhood surrounding the church to be just as beautiful and iconic as the church. And there's this really big wall across the street from it. And I thought it was the perfect place to have art, a mural that was beautiful to look at, whether you're a Leon Russell fan or not.
Yeah.
And approached Pat, and the rest is history.
yeah, and a lot of the there was a lot of complications, or not a lot of complications, but a really simple one, which was time, really, ironically, because of what the film's about. But, you know, because of the Sundance opportunity, which was kind of a last minute thing for us, we ended up having to condense down the amount of time we had to produce it, really.
Right.
And which caused some challenges, I'm sure. But it was something we were super psyched about, of course, but of course I had to do the music really quickly, and I had to look at a rough cut without any graphics and stuff while we're working on. It wasn't the prettiest process, but so I'd love to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what you're saying there with time is a big deal. We had a certain amount of time that Pat had his artwork there. And then we also had Brian Lewis, doing the mural, right? And he had a certain amount of time that he had to paint that. So we had each of those days to film.
Right.
So
whether the weather was
good,
being nice or not,
yeah. That was a pretty complex situation. And finding like Matthew helped us a lot with that, where some days where I couldn't go out or Jordan couldn't go out.
Or the bad weather days, right?
Or
You
the
said
bad
Matthew.
weather would
Right.
get us. Matthew
That was
went
my
out
challenge.
and filmed some of the B-roll, and finding the time when we could schedule the interviews beforehand and making all that happen was really complex with the time. So
Yeah, we knew we really wanted to create something special.
Yeah.
We knew, sitting down, well, I think our first conversation about it was on the phone. And I think you or I were in the car. We were in a Wendy's parking lot. We're like, oh, it's time to talk to Teresa. So we just pulled over. And one of the things about the whole project that got me really excited was you talking about how you want to create something that's beautiful, not that's necessarily any kind of political statement or anything like that, which was very refreshing. At the time we were in the, peak of getting ready for elections and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, great. So we get to work on something that's not about politics. It's not about an agenda. It's about art. It's about beauty. It's about just music, completely uncontroversial, just universally loved. And so that really attracted me to the project of wanting to get involved. And so that was really cool. Now, the time of how it all came together, in my world, in the production world, time is never on your side, ever.
Yeah.
Now, some projects
Ain't that the
are
truth?
less on your side than others.
right.
But what was unique about this was that we had some extra people to lean on to make things happen in our tight window. So obviously, for me, I'm one of the partners at Grassfire. Bryce works with us at Grassfire, but this gentleman, he works for you here. And it was really cool when you're like, hey, no, I want you to work with Matthew. I want Matthew to be a part of it. Let's find ways to coordinate there. So that was really special to be able to kind of cross the boundaries. Where usually we're working on projects internally, but we're actually, we're coordinating with Matthew. We're coordinating with music with Cade, and it's kind of going back and forth there. So it was fun to lean on other people to get
More
some of those things done.
collaborative.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was
more of a
very
family
collaborative
team.
project.
Right. So, and then you guys early on had an opportunity to interview Pat and go to his studio.
Yeah.
Yes, which was just one of the highlights of the whole process.
Really? Yeah.
Thanks.
Meeting Pat, his two dogs, and that room that you paint in is one of my favorite scenes that we've ever captured. There's so much texture, there was so much color, there was so much creativity in that shot. I want to like find the freeze frame and print it out and put it somewhere in the studio because it's just one of my favorite shots that we've ever got. But just hearing your story about Leon and how you don't paint from your memory, but on this you were.
Yeah.
True. I work from photographs, but Leon Russell was in my history as well, which was the odd and surprising thing when I met Teresa when she came to talk to me about the mural. I lived a block from Leon when I moved to Tulsa in the 70s, early 70s, 72, I believe. And he lived down the street, and I'd see him all the time. I was just, I thought it was the coolest thing I could do, was I was going to TU, drive down Norfolk, look up, and there they were. So not approachable. It wasn't like I felt like I could walk up on the front porch, but
So you didn't go borrow a cup of sugar or anything like that?
cup of vodka. No, wasn't my idea. But it was fun to watch from that vantage point for a long time until the house collapsed, and then they moved, and I didn't see him for a long time. But then my friend Emily Smith was one of Leon's muses, and she taught me to play bridge. So we were good friends. And I heard incredible stories about Leon and Emily and Charles Seeger, and really a rich plethora of people who lived here in the 70s, who are no longer, unfortunately, with us. But it was really interesting to get to know them and see them at the time. So it's it has had kind of a kinetic, kind of circumstantial tie to each other. It's just been the most fun I've had in a long time.
Well, you're a lot of fun to work with.
Comes and goes.
I loved it.
So for the people that watch this on a regular basis, they'll notice that we're actually in a very different room than usual. And we chose this room for two reasons. One, it is full of your artwork, which is just gorgeous.
Thank you.
But also, this is the room that we interviewed you in, and we got to hear your story of how you came to own the church, how your love for Leon as a child and stuff like that. So talk a little bit about just why you were passionate about this project, why you wanted to bring this to life.
It's really hard to put into words. I mean, sometimes when I start things, I get a little obsessive. And so that's kind of what happened with this mural. I wanted it so badly because, of course, the church is going to be home to so many different people, not only locals, but visitors that come to Tulsa. I'm from Tulsa. It's my hometown. I'm so proud of it. So this particular project was just incredible because it captures the past. It's a nod to the past, but it really celebrates the future and the present, and just hopefully inspires just a whole new group of not only artists, but musicians. And this huge wall, I mean, it's so captivating.
Yeah.
And when you walk down those church stairs, and I mean, it's just right in front of you. And, we have this property as well. And I thought it was really neat that we could do that interview, not only for me, but for our muralist, Brian. And I wish Brian was with us today.
I do too.
Yeah, I do too. He lives in North Carolina, so he couldn't be here with us. But this was the neighborhood that Pat lived in, that Leon Russell lived in. It's called Maple Ridge. It's a historic neighborhood. And so, it was just fabulous to be able to be here, very close to the crime scene. But but yeah, it's been a really special project, and I'm excited. And the way we preserved it, I mean, after we completed the mural, we applied a marine product that will protect it from anyone that wants to, well, hopefully no one wants to vandalize it, but it does happen with outdoor art.
Right.
And so that was part of the process as well.
It's awesome.
That's cool, because
Yeah.
I was curious about that. Like, how do you protect something like that? Because
Yeah.
it's not
layers.
You can't just like call your local, somebody and say, "Hey, can you come repaint this part of it?"
Yeah.
Right. And this material is amazing. We tested it with paint and other things, and you can wipe it right off.
Wow.
So, we want this to be in our community for many years to come. Again, not only to celebrate the work that Pat has given us all of these years, but really the life and legacy of Leon Russell, which was my original interest in coming up with this idea.
And I think that one of the coolest parts about this is that this is going to introduce Leon Russell and that Tulsa sound to a brand new generation. So
True.
I'm from Dallas, but I've been here since I was 12. I've been here most of my life. I'm a musician, but I didn't hear about Leon Russell. I didn't hear about the history of the church studio until I met you and started to research all of that. And now, knowing you, learning the history of it, it's just been really cool. And this wall is
Right.
going to introduce that to the whole new generation.
I
No,
hope so.
yeah, no, I agree. And especially young people like Matthew and Cade. And it really is, I mean, he was a brilliant musician, but it's really more of what he stood for. I mean, he was an entrepreneur himself, even though people never called Leon Russell an entrepreneur, but this creative workshop that he had at the church. And that's really what it's all about. You don't have to be a huge fan of his music, even though I would never understand why you wouldn't be a huge
How
fan
you
of his
couldn't
music.
be.
Yeah, how could you
How
not?
you could.
I mean, again, crazy people, but it really is what he stood for. And so it's just really, really great. I mean, what do you think, Matthew? I mean, getting involved with a project like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the seeing the mural, like whenever I'm like driving by it, it's something that captivates the younger mind, because I wouldn't, as a young person myself, I wouldn't necessarily go back into the 70s and be like, what kind of artists were popular at this time? But when I see something that is like colorful like that, and it's like really captivating, like honestly, this kind of art doesn't feel like it's from the 70s as much as it's like made now to commemorate the 70s. And so like I look at it and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. What is this about? And I think it'll have that effect on young people throughout the city.
Every time I drive to our studio, which is like located 50 feet from the wall, it's really close. I'll always go kind of this long way that always, whoever's following me, we always pass by the wall, and I'll roll down my window and I just put my hand out and make sure that they look over there, and they're like, oh my gosh, what was that? That was so cool. And I love, you know, it's not my wall, but it's a part of this story of this Studio Row district, and it's something that we can be proud of as the business owners that are in that area. And so we love that you are continuing to invest in that.
Well,
and that's just been really cool.
Well, and that's why we wanted to capture on film, right? Make this little film about what we did and the love and passion and hard work and talent that went into it, and the music. So
yeah. So was there like pressure on the, because I mean, the wall honors Leon Russell, Mr. Music.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, how much pressure was on you to get the score right?
Well, I knew that the direction you were wanting to go based on some of the temp music and stuff, and I knew just the feeling of it, you know, wanted to be kind of a pretty traditional kind of cinematic feel with the music. So I was just thinking it was more like trying, how can I sort of force some bluesiness or into this, you know, some of that Leon piano feel and stuff. But there was one section I was able to do that, but there were also a couple of parts later on, like where he says Leon, and I do a little blues lick on the piano, and it's like really quiet, like no one's gonna notice it, but it makes me smile every time I see it, because I'm like, ha, got it in there.
Actually, I feel like I've noticed that a lot, though. Especially the blues part, I think that you're talking about is when Teresa starts talking about Leon, right? So that's one of my favorite parts of the whole film.
Yeah.
It's just this, actually the history part that you're tying into it, Teresa.
Right.
And like it, you know, the process that we talked about, we have, you have Pat with his art, and then you have Brian doing his art, you know, and then combining with the spray paint as well as your artwork. And it's this amazing combination. And then, you know, you kind of bridge all the gaps of all the information from Leon Russell, as well as like why we're doing this and what this means to like Tulsa.
it was kind of a confusing storyline.
Not really.
I was trying to explain to people, and I was like, it's about Pat Gordon, but it's kind of about Leon. It's very much about Leon. But then we have this really cool spray paint artist.
Which goes back to this whole collaborative, everything about it, from the conception of it. It involves everybody.
Yeah.
It honors so many people, which is really cool.
Yeah, something I want to ask Pat about, was there any part of you that was skeptical or like nervous about, okay, what's this going to look like, you know, when he does it, you know?
And he's got nerves of steel.
I didn't. In fact, when I saw the original piece that I just went blank. When we saw the original piece that he had done a year ago, that was
of Leon
and some roses, I had no question, and Teresa and I had been talking about it. We just didn't know who could do it, who could take my work and reproduce it and make it onto a wall and bring it up in scale and still keep it accurate.
Yeah.
And I saw this guy and went, I don't have any question. Never gave it a second thought.
Did you expect it to be that accurate? I mean, because to me, to my eye, I was just like, geez, man.
I did expect it to be that accurate, and I was not disappointed.
And people think that you did that
I'm
art.
sure they do.
I mean, all the time, it's like, how did he did it? And
How
then
could
he
do
did
it at his age.
No.
But no, it was incredible.
Yeah.
I still don't quite get it.
And he was
And
under
I
pressure.
understand paint.
Well, because you're using brushes, and I know we cover all this in the film, but it's just like you're using brushes, you're using spray paint. It's like, how did he make it?
We were
a
in
different
production.
control.
We were in production before I had seen what Brian could do. So we were doing interviews. He had started outlining stuff, but not the spray paint stuff. And when I went down 4th Street and saw the other mural that he did, and I was like, Oh.
That's how I felt.
Oh, okay. I get it now. And I'm still dumbfounded of how that actually works with spray paint. Because when I look at it, I'm like,
And he was
that's
nervous. At first he was like, "Oh, I can replicate anyone's work," and he's so
Yeah.
sweet. He's confident,
Yeah.
and he has so much experience. And then he Googled you and your history, and so
And he accomplished what we hoped.
well, he
would.
fell in love with you when he met with you. He had such a good time, and I love how he shares that.
Yeah,
when
it was.
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when we interviewed Brian in this room right over here, and he started to talk about you, you could tell how much admiration he has
nice.
when he started to talk about
I have
you
it for him.
and the special time that he spent at your house in your studio, and how he was just in awe of what you've done.
Well,
I'm the same way.
push off.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
As I was watching like him painting and stuff like that, like throughout the week, he had like a week when he was like start to finish, and he was under pressure. But like for me as a cinematographer, when I was going up and I was shooting some B-roll of what he was doing, I got more and more excited every single time I saw him, just to watch it unfold. It's one thing to shoot, one part of it, but then it's another thing later on in the week to see how it's progressed and to shoot, a later part of how it's developing, and then to put those shots back to back and be like, whoa, like what he's doing is really incredible. And then his skill, there was one time when I went over there and I was watching him doing what he was doing, and he hadn't painted one of the tulips yet. It's actually on the painting, the impression of the painting behind us. And I turned around, and then I turned back, and one of the roses was just there. And I was like, and he did it that fast. Like the skill that he has is
Unbelievable.
incredible.
Yeah.
He really is.
His eye sees and literally translates to how he turns the can of paint
Mhm.
by the tip. He had specific tips on the end of it that he could change out.
Yeah.
But it really was a matter of being so sensitive with a can of spray paint that he could make art like that.
One of my
It's
favorite things
astounding.
about your art in this piece and some of the other ones is how three-dimensional they look.
Well, I'm known as a realist. That's what we
they
do.
look like I could reach out and I see depth in places that I don't typically see in artwork. And it's amazing to me. I'm like, man, that looks like something that our 3D graphics back at the studio put together. But you painted it.
Yeah, well, I can't do it on a computer. So.
I can't do it anywhere.
So
Well,
going back to Brian, there were so many details. So I walked up, while just like the story you just shared, and he was working on the baby Jesus, even though he did not know it was the baby Jesus. And you and I had a similar experience. So, I mean, you were telling me about it. Tell us about the baby Jesus.
Well, I asked Teresa on the last, because really, I'm telling you, this is the kind of dream client that I always had a dream about, that they'd let me do what I do best and they would just let me do it. And she did just exactly that. Anyway, I didn't have any requests. I asked if she had a request for the last one, and she said, well, I really love the song Stranger in a Strange Land. And I said, oh, I do too. So I can hum a tune. I can sing a few bars. Well, but I had never sat down and read the lyrics printed out.
Yeah.
And it's about the birth of baby Jesus. That's what the song is about. I didn't know that. So, well, then I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to portray the baby Jesus? I grew up in Oklahoma, so I've had a good religious background, even though I am a confirmed Unitarian. I had to think about it, and so I started off with the little baby Jesus at the bottom of the painting, and I thought, this doesn't look right. This doesn't feel right. This is not me. I don't understand. This isn't going to work. How am I going to do this? Well, I took the dogs out for a walk one day, and my yard people had just been there, and my driveway was spotless. And I took the dogs on their walk, and when I came back, lying in the very middle of the driveway, perfectly clean, was a single baby blue jay feather. Just lying there, blue as could be against this sea of gray. And I leaned over and I picked it up, And I looked at it and I thought, well, this is a gift. Now, what's this gift for? The baby Jesus. And that's how the baby Jesus became the feather in the painting of a stranger in a strange land.
Wow.
And then when I saw it, it looked like a fish,
Well,
which is symbolic for Jesus.
I put, just because I like to paint water droplets, I put a water droplet on it. It wasn't intended to look like a fisheye, but she's got such a good view, got good vision.
Now, is that one in here?
Yeah,
It's,
we'll have to. Yeah,
In there,
it's
over in
right
the
over
corner.
here.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah,
here in
you
a
have to
minute.
look at it.
And
It's
Now that I've heard the
beautiful.
behind the scenes,
And I
so
shared
the
that.
so the feather then takes on the appearance of a fish, and of course, which is
Yeah, it's
symbol
like
Yeah.
for Jesus.
it's like
So
that whole process was guided,
Right.
you know.
And then
most of them are, but we don't know how.
And Brian was working on the feather, baby Jesus, right as I walked up. And I shared that to him. He was like, oh my goodness. And so he got a couple of things and went like this. And I was like, it was the feather baby Jesus fish. And it was beautiful. And he did such a great job with it.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's really neat. But those things happen over and over with this team, with each of you. It just was it was hard work, but it was so much fun, and it was very rewarding.
Absolutely.
It is rewarding. It's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done.
Yeah.
Well, and it's easy when you have this kind of subject matter, you know,
Yeah.
something so fascinating just in itself, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, cool. Well, you've been listening to From the Chamber, and you can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the notification bell, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.